Welcome everyone, this is Honest Restart, and today we're going to be talking about Monster Hunter Rise. This is a new big game that's coming out for Nintendo Switch a day after this recording, and I personally am very excited for this game, and I'm sure many of you have noticed a lot of buzz around this game. So today what we're going to be talking about is why everyone is so excited for Monster Hunter Rise. Maybe you're someone who is not familiar with the series, who hasn't played it before. Maybe you're curious why everyone's so excited about this particular game. Or maybe you're an old veteran of Monster Hunter, but you're noticing that this game seems to have a little bit more buzz than previous Monster Hunter games. So we're also going to be talking about how this one seems to perhaps be a little bit more special than previous games, and how it might even end up being the best-selling Monster Hunter of all time. Maybe, at least for Nintendo systems. We'll see. But anyway, that's what we're focusing on today. Now before we jump into things, let me very quickly talk about my social media. You may see a few different things here on screen, you can check those all out, they are linked in the description below. And of course, if you like what you're seeing here, you can also subscribe. So before we get into why Monster Hunter Rise, gameplay-wise, is a bit more special than previous games, I would say, I first want to talk about how I am thinking this game is going to end up being one of, if not the best-selling third-party games on Nintendo Switch. Now, if you don't know what third-party means, basically that means something not made by Nintendo. Monster Hunter is made by Capcom, one of my favorite publishers that isn't Nintendo. They make some incredible games. Some of my favorite series come from Capcom, such as Resident Evil, and, of course, also Monster Hunter. And now we're getting Monster Hunter Rise. We haven't gotten a mainline Monster Hunter game on a Nintendo system for about 8 years. This is the first ground-up new Monster Hunter game since then, and when that last happened, that was on the Nintendo 3DS. The last time we saw a ground-up new Monster Hunter game for a Nintendo system that was for home console was back in 2009 for Monster Hunter Tri. But since then, we've seen a few other Monster Hunter entries, usually expansions, but there was one big new Monster Hunter game that came out just a couple years ago that has made some waves, and that's Monster Hunter World. Monster Hunter World, especially when you include the expansion Iceborne, is the best-selling Monster Hunter game of all time. Looking here on this site, when you account for the expansion, we're talking about over 20 million in copies sold here, which I would say is incredibly impressive. But you know, there's a small chance that we could see even greater success for Monster Hunter Rise on the Nintendo Switch. Now, to be fair, Monster Hunter Rise is coming out for Nintendo and in the future for PC. That does not include PlayStation or Xbox, so you could make a very grand argument that Monster Hunter World will stay the best-selling Monster Hunter game because it's available for more platforms, for sure. I mean, with Monster Hunter World, it was a huge advancement for the series. Not only was it able to make the series far more popular in the West, Monster Hunter is usually very popular in the East, but it innovated upon the series. The series became far more open, no longer singular loading zones, but an entire expansive world that you get to explore. And there was also a number of quality of life changes that sped up the gameplay and made it a little bit more accessible for more players. And as a result, Monster Hunter World still maintained that quality of Monster Hunter, but also made it more inviting for a lot more people, and it's the most successful Monster Hunter game we've ever seen. But thanks to that success, and thanks to Monster Hunter World making the series more mainstream, now that we're getting another new Monster Hunter game that's ground up for the Nintendo Switch, I think that's actually going to give it a better chance to succeed even more. A lot of people who own Monster Hunter World are going to pick up Monster Hunter Rise. Not just because they're now new fans of the series, but also because Monster Hunter Rise is now on the Nintendo Switch, the fastest selling system on the market, which still has years of potential success to increase its install base, and with that, even more sales potential. But this is a portable system. Portable Monster Hunter. When you have things that are portable, that just makes it far more inviting and accessible for far more people. Monster Hunter World had a lot of success in the West, but with Monster Hunter Rise, we're seeing a lot of signs that, like most previous Monster Hunter games, they have had a lot more success in the East. We've seen that Monster Hunter is topping in the Amazon Japan sales charts. And on top of that, apparently a couple companies are even willing to have their own holidays for the release for Monster Hunter Rise. That just sort of goes to show you how popular this game is going to be over in Japan. And with the massive, ever-increasing success of the Nintendo Switch and that portability, and now the increased accessibility that was established in Monster Hunter World, this game has huge potential to be incredibly successful. But there are a few other things that are boding well for this game. And not only are the reviews quite favorable, last I checked, there was like 60 or 70 critical reviews already out there, and the game was at around 87 on Metacritic, which I would say is pretty high. But also, if you look at the games that have come out for Switch lately, this is one of the most ambitious games we've seen come out for Nintendo Switch that we can play during this time of the year. And I think that's very exciting for a lot of people. People who own a Nintendo Switch that are looking for a new experience, that want something that's challenging, that's more of that hardcore-centric kind of game, an epic, adventurous, ambitious experience, that's Monster Hunter Rise. And considering some of the changes we're seeing with Monster Hunter Rise, it seems that they're making the game even more accessible to even more people, which I think does give it incredible selling potential, perhaps even more so than Monster Hunter World. Maybe. But because of all of these things, I do feel like this game has a serious chance to become one of the best-selling games on Nintendo Switch and one of the best-selling Monster Hunter games of all time. Last year, for March, we got Animal Crossing New Horizons, and that had incredible viral success. One, because the game is great, another because the Nintendo Switch just allows for games to sell better than any other platform, but also because of the pandemic. It was a unique situation, and that definitely helped things to speed up, at least, for sales for Animal Crossing, and it's now over 30 million copies sold, the second best-selling game on Switch, and it's right behind Mario Kart. It could likely pass it in the coming years, or perhaps the coming months. But now we're still during the pandemic times. I do feel like things are getting better, but, you know, people still are looking to buy more electronics and such. And with Monster Hunter Rise coming out during this time, it definitely has a huge opportunity to make its mark. So with all of that in mind, there's going to be a lot of people buying this game. A lot of people are going to buy into the hype and the excitement for this, and I feel like with good reason. But what some of you may be wondering is why? Why are so many people excited for this game? What makes it so special? Well, Monster Hunter is just a quality series as a whole. It's a series that's about hunting giant monsters. Basically, you go into these wonderful, exotic environments and you explore looking for a giant, intimidating creature. Usually your objective is to hunt or capture this creature, and this creature doesn't just die in a moment or two. It's the entire mission is to fight this creature. They have bucket loads of HP, they have their own behaviors and attack patterns that you have to sort of sit back and analyze and understand, and basically every mission is a giant, long boss fight. So if you're a fan of epic giant boss battles, I feel like Monster Hunter is probably for you. But something about the Monster Hunter series that's always been a little bit challenging is because the game has been designed to be challenging. The controls have been designed in a way where, at first glance, you might say they're clunky, because with Monster Hunter, you have to commit to what you're gonna do, and oftentimes when you do that, and you don't do it at the right time, you will be punished by the giant monster you're fighting. Monster Hunter is a challenging game. So maybe because of how challenging it's been over the years, it hasn't been as inviting, which is why only until Monster Hunter World did the series really saw some mainstream success. But that brings me to a lot of the quality of life changes that have come to Monster Hunter as of late. These quality of life changes have made the game more accessible and made it something that is more inviting for people, that will allow them to perhaps give it a try and fall in love with this. So while the game is challenging, they've done a lot of things to speed up the gameplay. Not just with the seamless open environments that we saw since Monster Hunter World, which are now in Monster Hunter Rise, but also just a lot of other smaller quality of life changes that speed up the grind. Because while Monster Hunter isn't your typical RPG where you have a level up system, you still do gather resources and defeat monsters and gather their parts to build better armor and weapons. But also you collect a lot of other resources for healing yourself and improving your stats. A lot of these things have been streamlined with the advancements in Monster Hunter World, but in Monster Hunter Rise, they're going the next extra step here. With all the things they're doing with the endemic life, it's making exploring the environment far more fun. It's no longer just about looking through an environment to find a giant monster, but it's collecting all of these little creatures that will improve your stats to a noticeable degree. And sometimes some of these things are in places that monsters wouldn't normally be, but you have to use some sort of special platforming to get there. Which brings me to another one of the really good advancements or new additions to Monster Hunter Rise, and that's the wire bug mechanic. You see, what's really interesting about the wire bug mechanic is that it's basically a grapple that you can do at any point. And what this enables you is it enables you to fly in the air, have a lot more acrobatic ability than far more previous Monster Hunter games, and to explore the environment in a way that's never been done before in a Monster Hunter game. It's not entirely like Breath of the Wild, but to some extent, it does feel somewhat like it because, unlike most other games, you can actually go to places that you wouldn't normally expect. And to me, as someone who loves to explore, that's very exciting. But the wire bug goes beyond that. It's not just about exploration and platforming and moving around more quickly, but it's also with the combat as well. It speeds up the combat. It gives you more options to dodge or to jump on top of and do more acrobatic attacks or simply have more crazy attack combinations. The wire bug has really expanded upon the different things you can do in the Monster Hunter world. But on top of that and all the other quality of life changes like with the endemic life, you also have the Palamute. You get to ride around on a dog and do a lot of the things that you would normally have to stop and wait to do in previous Monster Hunter games, like sharpening your blade or drinking health or eating meat to improve your stamina. These are things that normally you would sit back, do all of it. It would take you a few minutes while you let the monster run away and do its little thing, perhaps recover. Now, you can jump on your dog and do these things as you chase it down. And I'll point out for those who haven't been on the Monster Hunter World Parade, there are no longer loading screens, so everything is continuous as well. You're no longer separated by a loading screen on top of that. So the overall point here is that Monster Hunter Rise has sped up the gameplay. It's made it more convenient. It's given you more attack options, which make the game even more interesting and more exciting, and the world is far more fun to explore than previous Monster Hunter games. So basically, from everything we're hearing and seeing, Monster Hunter Rise is even more of an improvement over Monster Hunter World, which was already making huge strides for the series. If there was ever a time to jump into the series, it's now. On the Switch, where it's portable, and it's even faster than ever before, with tons of quality of life changes that make the experience far more easy. But that's not to say the game doesn't still have challenge. The game is challenging, for sure, and if you're someone who likes to be challenged, I think Monster Hunter is definitely the game for you. But from what I've played of different Monster Hunter games, they still do at least ease you into it and build you up, so don't expect to be completely swamped and thrashed in the main game. This series has tons of replayability and content to explore, and from what we've heard of Monster Hunter Rise, it's gonna be like Monster Hunter World, or even how Pokemon is now on the Nintendo Switch. You're not gonna have to wait for the Ultimate Edition that'll come a year and a half down the road. You're gonna be getting free DLC updates, ultimately leading into an expansion, which to me is a far better deal because you just have to pay a little bit more money for even more content for DLC as to having to buy a whole other game to get that extra new content. So Monster Hunter Rise, I think, is very exciting, and I'm really looking forward to playing this game when it comes out tomorrow. I can't wait. But that should pretty much sum up why everyone is excited for Monster Hunter Rise, and why this game, I think, is going to go down as the best-selling third-party game on Switch, or at least up to what we've seen so far, and potentially one of, if not the best-selling Monster Hunter games of all time. So yeah, I think it's going to be a big deal. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Anyways, everyone, this is On Just Restart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care.